The Rock fist bumps a gorilla. 14 out of 10 movie of the decade. In all seriousness, Rampage is an unashamedly fun film. Adapted from the Midway arcade game of the same name, it has broken the supposed video game adaptation curse by not just being a good movie for a video game adaptation, but rather just a good movie in general. I mean, it's no masterpiece, this shit ain't gonna go down in the annals of cinema history, but it's not concerned with doing so. It's pure escapist popcorn fun, and it succeeds in every effort at being that. The film follows the Dwayne Johnson Rock as Davis, a humble primatologist zookeeper, who is geek best mates with an albino silverback gorilla he calls George and talks to through sign language and occasionally fist bumps. I know I've already mentioned that, but that's super important. The Rock fist bumps a gorilla. I mean, come on, that's fantastic. Anyway, things go to shit when a secret space station run by an evil corporate brother and sister that's working on genetic engineering chemicals, fuck me, this is so stupid, I love it, explodes and sends said chemicals hurtling towards Earth, where they manage to come into contact with George and a couple of other wild animals, a wolf called Ralph and a crocodile named Lizzie, and turn them all into giant super aggressive monsters that start smashing up Chicago, which as everyone knows is the most awful major American city to attack because that's where our Lord and Saviour Kanye West was raised. And obviously if that shit goes down, he might lose the will to produce another album, so the stakes couldn't be higher really. Anyway, once the shit hits the fan, it's up to this humble, down-to-earth, but also incredibly badass and extremely military-competent gorilla scientist to take out these monstrous beings while also stopping the government shooting up his best mate, Georgie Boy. It's almost hard to review this one because it kind of does exactly what it says on the tin. So if you looked at the tin and thought, holy shit, that looks like a dumb good time, then let me tell you, the tin might as well be called Shakira's hips because it ain't lying to you. The only way this film could be more fun would be if at one point in the movie The Rock needed help, so he called up an old scientist friend that turned out to be Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then Stone Cold stunned out a giant evil panda or some shit. Hell, that's probably a possibility for the sequel, because this first one was awesomely stupid. This is how you do a video game adaptation. You don't go down this self-important, totally serious, come on guys, this is a real film route of something like the god-awful Assassin's Creed on multiple Hitman attempts. You also don't try and shove in every recognizable aspect of a franchise's iconography in a crazy bloated mess of the Mortal Kombat Annihilation variety, and you certainly don't do whatever the Christ that Super Mario Bros. Film was doing. I've spoken at length before about why I think video game adaptations don't work in my series Video Game Movie Madness, and about how difficult it is to nail adaptations in general. But for those who haven't seen those videos, my basic theory is that whenever you are adapting to film from a book or a comic, you have the capacity to add something, such as visuals to words or motion to still images. But whenever you adapt from a video game, you're always taking away something, namely interactivity. So it always feels like a lesser form of the original media you enjoyed because it falls into one of two camps. The adaptation is either A, a confusing mess that tries to look something like but shares nothing in common with its source material, probably due to filmmakers struggling to find a way to adapt pieces of media that were never meant to be movies to begin with, or B, it tries to be a faithful adaptation, but never can be, because until our data-sharing robot overlord Mark Zuckerberg plugs us all into the Matrix where we can live the experience of North Korean-style propaganda films to distract us while he drains the world's resources dry to make room for his hidden reptilian master race of the New World Order, there is no way to faithfully adapt the interactive experience to the film format. And this is why Rampage has finally cracked the code to give us something entertaining. It has no interest in adaptation, it's basically a semi-recognisable name stuck on a silly, over-the-top kaiju disaster flick that sits somewhere in terms of quality and tone between the crowd-pleasing silliness of The Day After Tomorrow and Pacific Rim. I mean, really, what has it even got to adapt? Unlike the likes of Assassin's Creed, Hitman, Mortal Kombat, Prince of Persia, Resident Evil, Final Fantasy, Tekken, or any of the other countless video game franchises to receive failed attempts at cinematic success, Rampage doesn't exactly have an expansive lore that needs to carry over. There's no hugely recognisable symbolism or meaningful characters that need captured in the transition. There's no multi-game expanding 10 to 40 hour long deep story. It's just big ass lizards and gorillas and shit punching up buildings. By that logic, this movie is as faithful an adaptation of the Rampage video game as Godzilla The Final Wars was. Which, side note by the way, is the best Godzilla movie, because while I get that the original is a purposeful and sincere classic that captures the fears and anxieties of an entire nation surrounding atomic warfare in a post-Hiroshima environment, Final Wars has a scene where Godzilla and a big-ass monster called King Caesar play football with a spiky ball monster called Anguirus, and Caesar fucking smashes an absolute belter in past Gotti Boy like he's about to win the World Cup for Japan. So Anyway, random tangent aside, Rampage is a seriously fun movie, mostly because it's an entertaining flick first and an adaptation second. Even with the game having barely any narrative content in the first place, the movie still manages to change multiple things because in the best possible way, it doesn't give a shit about the story, or rather lack of one, present in the game series. The similarities basically begin and end with there is a giant wolf, a giant lizard, and a giant gorilla, and they smash things. The monsters of the film aren't originally humans that get transformed like they were in the game. The wolf can fly now, which was never a thing in the game, because if it was, why would anyone choose to play as anybody but him? The monsters also look nothing like what they do in the game. The gorilla isn't even the right colour. The closest we get to any real acknowledgement that the film has anything to do with the arcade classic is the actual cabinet appearing in the background of the villain's main office. It is interestingly poetic then that somehow in not concerning itself with being remotely faithful to the arcade game, it actually becomes the most faithful video game adaptation I've ever seen, because it manages to capture the most important thing in its adaptation, the soul of the source material. Rampage the game is an awesome, silly button masher, and this is 100% the movie equivalent of that. Even with all the changes, like the addition of a thin plot and focus on the human characters, the movie feels like the game, despite visually and narratively being almost unrecognizable from it. It's also the first video game movie I've seen to add something to the source material rather than take away from it, and that's spectacle. Due to adapting from pretty simplistic stuff, this wasn't really present in the game franchise. Rampage, after all, is hardly the extremely cinematic experience of something like Uncharted, for example. And it's in this spectacle that the Rampage movie finds the Hollywood mirror image of the button mashing silliness that made the game an arcade classic. The film is fun in the same way the game was. Every actor in it seems to be having a blast, whether it's Naomi Harris spouting silly technobabble as the city falls down around the cast, Jeffrey Dean Morgan doing a wonderful scenery-chewing cowboy accent, Brianne Hill and Jake Lacey eveling it up with ridiculous I will tie your wife to the railway track for a fiver and a piece of gum style villainous performances, or The Rock fist-bumping giant gorillas. It's hard not to find some enjoyment in this stupidly chaotic, absurdly daft, and somewhat heartfelt nonsense. And of course it's not perfect, it's very by the numbers and it trips up in its second act by slowing down to spend what is perhaps too much time on military compounds. It more than makes up for it with a half-hour finale that's just giant-ass animals beating the shit out of each other with giant-ass buildings. And sure, that's lowest common denominator entertainment, but you know what? I am the lowest common denominator. We all are, really. No one's better than anybody else because they have a more refined taste in movies or whatever. And if you're willing to accept that and just for a moment acknowledge that ridiculous, dumb, CG overloaded blockbusters can also be super good fun times when done right, and that no matter how hard you might try to suggest otherwise, there's something primally enjoyable about watching big-ass zoo animals smash 7 shades of shit out of each other, then you'll find something to like here, because quite frankly, I could watch like 7 more of these. And I actually think that's what they're setting up for here, because there's a pet rat recurringly made a focus of this movie that seems to have no other purpose to exist than to be set up for Rhett the Rat appearing in sequels. I hope The Rock fist bumps him too. In fact, I hope this spawns an entire franchise where The Rock just fist bumps increasingly absurd animal friends as narrative payoff. I hope he fist bumps a whale. That'd be class. Now normally I'd stop the review there, but I've got a couple of things I need to say real quick. Firstly, I recently signed up to a new app you can follow me on called Stardust, which lets me post quick movie reviews and reactions. Turns out it's really fun. I swear this isn't sponsored, I genuinely just think this is canny. I'm trying to do these somewhat regularly to cover stuff I miss on the channel, post early reactions, and spotlight more weird and obscure films. Fans of my videos who want to see more unusual coverage and recommendations of hidden gems should follow me on there. Plus it'll mean there's some regular short video content to consume in the downtime between big uploads to the channel. Links in the description. Also, I do believe these guys are aware of my YouTube channel, so I reckon if I get enough of you to follow me on there, I might even get a blue tick next to my name and become elusively verified. Which, as everyone knows, since I'm a millennial, is the only kind of shit that gives me any sense of validation. That and Facebook likes and retweets. So if any of you could follow me on there, it might help aid me in finding a temporary but ultimately false and meaningless moment of self-worth. So that'd be nice. I've already got 15 or so videos on there if you want to check out what I'm doing when I'm not crying and masturbating. Secondly, I want to apologise for the lack of uploads recently. Anyone who's been following the channel or follows me on Twitter or Facebook will know that this is due to some issues with copyright giving me 2 unfair strikes on the channel. This is being sorted out, but there's been some problems and bumps in the road with videos going up and then back down and all that faff. So while it hasn't yet been fixed, I was growing incredibly tired of waiting through this whole process after numerous issues caused delays. So I just uploaded this on the hope that it won't be another one that gets pulled. Fingers fucking crossed there. Please be nice to me, Warner Brothers. And thirdly, I want to thank everyone who came to the showing of my film The August Club at the International Film Festival over the Easter weekend. In particular, I want to thank one lass who is a long-time fan of the channel. I won't name her as I don't want to share any personal details, but she knows who she is, and this lady literally flew into the UK from Poland just to see a thing I had made. That's madness, and you're insane, but I massively appreciate the support and effort. Glad you enjoyed it, and also you were dead canny, so give that lass a can of coke. Gold star for you, my friend.